Hi everyone, a very warm welcome to Let's Talk Data. I'm Josh from our internal comms team. I'm delighted to be joined by Vlad, our Director of Data. So what's this all about? Well, a couple of months ago now, we shared our data strategy with you all, which is available to view in a pack on Fabric. Hopefully you've seen that. And then we heard from Vlad, of course, at M Brown Fast Forward, and he mentioned that he'd be coming forward soon to tell us a little bit more about that. So today's that day. Here we are. Today is going to be very much an open Q&A with Vlad on how that's going. And we're going to be talking about how we're establishing data as an asset to win. But importantly, we're going to be talking also about how we need you to come with us on our data journey. So this is going to be a Q&A. So like we said, please pop your questions in the chat as we go along. We'll do our very best to get through them towards the end of the session. But to kick things off, Vlad, I suppose I'd love to ask you the question of why. Why did we need and why do we need a data strategy and why now?
Good question. Why do we need any strategy, right? Why do we need a business strategy? Why do we need an in-brand strategy? Why do we do a brand strategy for, accelerating heritage brands? I think we've realized that there is an exceptional level of opportunity that can be unlocked with data at this organization. And that's when, data got elevated from an enabler to a strategic pillar. The one that you mentioned, establishing data as an asset to win. And I think we've realized that we cannot do that at a small scale. We cannot do that in an isolated manner. There isn't FS data versus retail data. There isn't a group data versus the rest of the business data. We have to look at this comprehensively. What does that mean? Well, obviously, I'm sure everybody has read the data strategy, but comprehensively to me means look at the operating model, try and figure that out. Look at the technology that underpins everything that we're trying to do, try and figure that out. Look at the data culture across the organization. I think as a business, we've decided that's important. That's why we have a data strategy. Yeah. I think it's important. Hopefully, everyone else thinks it's important as well.
Agreed. Yeah. So let's talk a bit about the three pillars then behind the strategy, and I'd like to kick off by touching upon the operating model, which is the first pillar, of course. I suppose what's different about the way we're set up as a data domain and why this way as well?
I joined the business maybe about a year ago, probably less than a year now.
I think it was.
When I joined, there was a data science team that had another data science team within it. There was a connected intelligence team, a decision intelligence team. There was a data engineering team that reported to DT, the data function reported to finance. There were concerns around almost the dual prioritization of the different functions. There were disconnects in terms of how people would work together to deliver data-driven products, which is fine in a tactical way. And that's how data existed at M Brown before we all decided to make it a strategic focus. That was fine. A target operating model effectively decides how things should be. When you think about capacity, capability, organizational design or structure, how we decide to interact with the rest of the business, and that's actually probably done through the enterprise agility model, almost rights, responsibilities, remits, all that kind of stuff. Almost we should have an answer or at least a principle for each one of these questions, and that's kind of the strategy. And we've largely focused on the operating model over the last year. I think we're in a pretty good place. We didn't have the data domain that we're nearly going to have. We're going to mobilize the data domain in the next few weeks, but really we have a group data function today. We didn't have the tribes, we didn't have the squads that we operate in, we didn't have the right roadmaps, the right prioritization, the right feeds into Sarah and Dan to actually prioritize our work. We didn't have any of these things, and now we do. And I think I'm particularly proud of the progress that we've shown. There's clearly a few things left to do. We still have to mobilize the data domain. There's still a bit of almost isolated pockets of data capability that I think will need to be part of the wider ecosystem. But the large majority of the focus was on the operating model. That's what it is, and I think that's how we've progressed over the last year.
Yeah, cool. So I mean, we've heard the strategy is the data strategy itself is a 3-year plan. But what about the now? This is such a challenging retail environment at the moment. So how is the strategy helping to deliver for our customer today?
What's funny about that 3-year, by the way, is that every time someone asks me, it's still 3 years away. And I think that's the problem, right? That's the problem with the strategy, the fact that it is something big that we will do. And I have no doubt that data will transform this business, absolutely no doubt. And we have actually set ourselves up for success in this way, right? And I think we're doing it exceptionally well in that space.
Like the confidence.
But look at today. Well, I am actually. But look at today, right? Today, actually, the macroeconomic environment is very tough. It's not just the UK, it's not just retail, it's not just fashion. It is tough, right? And actually, we need to understand how does data, apart from delivering an exceptionally transformative experience for the business, help today? How do we pay our way to the transformation? And there's a few things I think, actually, the clearest thing, and I mentioned brand tribes earlier, right? That's probably one of the clearest things that was already sort of planned for in the data strategy and delivered. We have decentralized a lot of our analytical resources into the brand tribes. As these get mobilized, brand tribes get almost dedicated, localized resource for the questions that they think are important to them. So they don't have to compete with, you know, when Steve asks the questions versus Dre asks the question.
Of course.
Dre thinks, well, I can't get my answers, right? The whole point in decentralized resources, but in a well-governed structure like enterprise data and like the group data function, we've had excellent feedback as to how it has helped them short term and to navigate nimbly through some of the tough challenges.
Definitely. So obviously Dre is our general manager for our Simply Be tribe, and actually spoke to him before the session, and some of the feedback, as Vlad mentioned, he spoke about Angelita, who's the data analyst who's deployed in that tribe. He mentioned that supporting the tribe in its early stage, Angelita has been incredibly valuable to the team, helping us to get from insight to action much quicker. And Dre also mentioned that the new customer dashboard gives the tribe much more granular insights to customer behaviour, which is super exciting, of course. And he kind of said that moving forward, it'd be great to kind of better align data across the different areas, really so that we can kind of understand the decisions we're making on a weekly basis, how they affect the end result. And it's about learning quicker and building on what works, and also building on what doesn't work and understanding why. I love that, because that's just agile. It's all agile. Yeah, I know it's a nice review, but I love that, like, it all is agile in itself there, and that's great to see, of course.
Look, shout out to Angelique. She's amazing. And so is the rest of the group data function. I think that's almost an important thing to say, is the fact that the group data function is split into 5 different disciplines, as we call them, or chapters, I would call them today. You know, we have data analytics, which we talked about today. That's actually largely distributed across the whole business already. Because none of the resources are central, if you want to call it that. But then we have other sort of important, critical, short-term value add teams. We have data visualization, right? All the reports that break every day, it's the data visualization team that has to fix them and has to improve them, right? And then you have almost other disciplines that form that spectrum of short-term versus longer-term value. So when you look at like data science, for example, right? Data science are embedded into almost data-driven squads as part of our journey tribe, but that's kind of medium-term value. Sure, we're reshaping some of the roadmaps to add some short-term value, but that's largely medium-term value. Then you have data engineering, data management functions that focus on the transformation, some of the long-term value. So we operate across the whole spectrum of sort of short-term to medium-term value as well. I did mention the journey tribe, and I think that's important. You know, I mentioned before that we had plans in the strategy. The strategy says we have 2 roadmaps. Which might be confusing, but I think it's actually pretty clear. We have the transformation roadmap, the one that we described, and actually we're setting up and we're mobilizing it's called the mission tribe, the analytics platform mission tribe. So program manager coming in. We have all the tribe being set up soon, and that almost delivers the analytics platform as we promised in the fast forward session. But then we also have this data journey tribe, as it's called, and that has 3 different squads, and each one of these squads has a mission. For example, we have the pricing optimization squad, you know, how we algorithmically price our whole estate of products in a way that actually increases margins or revenue, or whatever the objective of their merchandise is. And we do tons of work in that space. Customer lifecycle, digital analytics, tons of work is being done almost across this duality of short term and longer term as well. You know, but there's also examples of things that we've never planned for. You know, Steve, we talked about this earlier. Steve sent me an email a couple of weeks ago on a Friday night saying, like, we've got 4 days to diagnose the whole business, right? And that's actually an exceptionally important question to ask, especially of an analytics function, right? Tell me what it is that I should be focusing on.
Yeah, of course.
And we have done, actually, the whole of the group data function has mobilized to do this. And it wasn't just group data. That's the best thing that has happened, right? The group data function has then mobilized almost the whole organization to be able to run this diagnosis exercise. It took us about 4 days, honestly. Things like this takes about 6 months to deliver one question, right? 4 days, we have managed to give some guidance. Obviously, there's tons of caveats in 4 days worth of work, but some clear guidance to the business as to what we think the areas of focus should be. And then that passed straight into Sarah's war rooms, and she has led almost 2 weeks worth of super crisp, focused action as to what it is that we could do within some of these areas. So our strategy allows for this agility and nimbleness almost as well as part of the enterprise agility framework. So all of these kind of work together to be able to focus, you know, especially now pivot a lot more towards the short term, just to make sure that we have enough funds to fund the wider strategy, the transformation that I am very excited about.
Of course, and all motivated by pace as well, by the sounds of it, which is always great.
Oh, plenty of pace in there.
Plenty.
Oh my God.
You touched on the analytics platform there, which is the second pillar to the strategy. So I suppose we know that's that's in the future, but where's that up to, and how's that going, I suppose?
Good question. So we haven't yet built any of the analytics platform yet.
Oh.
Actually, we as a business have attempted to do data platforms a couple of times before.
Okay.
And one of the things that I wanted to make sure we do is that we can guarantee the success of this delivery.
Yeah.
So actually, as I mentioned, the last sort of year was focused on the operating model, which is super important to be able to guarantee the success of the analytics platform. But also in the analytics platform space, we've done tons and tons of work. So we've run a discovery session that effectively tells us, and all this is available if anyone wants it, almost tells us what the analytics platform will look like, almost in a bit more detail. But also we've gone through the financial cases, how much is it going to cost? We've gone through a full procurement process, select the right supplier that helps us build some of this. We're now at the funding stage with IRC and potentially the PLC to make sure that, again, we create the right funding mechanism. We're signing the right contracts with people in the right ways to not be to not do it wrong. We spend all the money and we got nothing for it. So we're just trying to tighten every single screw that we can on the analytics platform to be able to deliver on it. We do think so. As also mentioned, we have the mission tribe that is being mobilized. We have a program manager joining end of June, I think. And that's almost the start of the mission tribe. Hopefully the supply will be ready maybe end of June-ish as well. Cool. That's effectively when we start building stuff. And I think that'll be an exciting day for me. That'll be champagne.
That's a big champagne day. I mean, that is exciting, and it promises so much. We mentioned it there, but I think with that one, obviously, so that is the second pillar. As you said, it is available to read through in a bit more detail on Fabric, but I think reach out as well. It's
what the hell is design to platform?
I was like, I was
literally asked this question.
I did, I had no idea.
It's part of the analytics platform. It's not just rebuilding new stuff. We're actually migrating almost everything from the old world into this new platform, and also decommissioning lots of crap. Frankly, it shouldn't exist there anymore. So it should be a very simple, clean.
Split, 100%. 100. If anyone is wondering about the analytics platform, just what that is, as we say, is there on Fabric to view, but as well, reach out to Vlad and the team, because it took time for me to understand it. I feel like I do more now anyway. 100%. So the third pillar of the strategy is data culture. So we've talked about that a lot, and culture is obviously, it's complex, it's complicated, and like with our business-wide culture, it certainly takes time, in terms of data culture. Then my question to you would be, what's the aim, and you've stressed the importance of that part of the strategy to me a few times. Why is it so important, data culture?
Not just to you, I think it's almost, whenever I talk about the data strategy, I almost say, do you know what, the first two pillars are almost the things that we kind of have to do. They're the hygiene factors, right? The thing that is transformational to the business, the thing that will change the way we work and operate and actually be extremely competitive, I think, in the marketplace, will be data culture. And I know it's a grandiose thing to say. Ask any person in my position, any sort of director of data, CDO in any mature company, they will say the same thing, right? Data culture is actually probably the most important thing that any data leader can do nowadays. In my mind, data culture is part of the business culture, right? You said almost it's the same exact thing, right? It's almost 100%. We're trying to almost go one layer deeper. We have the business culture, we go one layer deeper and say, all right, well, this is what we think it means for data. And they're going to roll out a whole program of initiatives. And it's probably going to be from next financial year. But why that's super important to me is that it isn't sufficient that I have a very strong group data function. It isn't sufficient that I have a very strong analytics platform. That's going to do nothing for the business, right? I want to have the whole business being very strong in its ability to, actually the mission for our data culture pillar, it says, we want to empower every colleague to meaningfully engage with data, to spot and leverage analytical opportunities, right? The whole business needs to do this. It wouldn't be good if we had 1,000 people in data being able to do this, right? We have to have 1,000 people across the whole group being able to do this.
Empowering colleagues to do so.
Right? And I don't know if hopefully everyone's read the data strategy. I love it. I think it's great.
I do.
The data culture pillar has 3 categories, and I think it's so important, and they sound very intuitive now, but actually in the industry, there's been so much debate and progress in how people tackle, because it's a new thing, how people tackle the data culture. And the framework that I've actually come up with for Inbound really revolves around these 3 ideas of curiosity, access, and knowledge. And the reason why these 3 are so important for example, you talked about Dre before, right?
Yeah.
Dre has huge amounts of curiosity. He needs questions answering, and he's asking the right questions. If he doesn't have the right access to information or to people or to tools, or he doesn't have the right knowledge to be able to engage with some of this data himself, he won't get what he needs, right?
Yeah.
You might have someone like, I don't know, a data professional, for example, this is checked out a bit. So for example, they have all the access, they have all the knowledge, but they can't be bothered. And therefore, at scale, we will not be able to shift anything. So when we talk about these three categories, all of them are super important. They're all interconnected. There's this trifecta that I talk about.
Yeah.
When we talk about access, for example, access isn't just you being able to go on Power BI and finding a report. That is part of it, but it isn't it. There's a huge roadmap. There's about 10 years worth of roadmap in the access pillar, which goes from you going to Power BI to you being able to create your own report, to you being able to engage with the raw data, to you being able to create your own machine learning algorithms, to you being able to create and maintain your whole data estate yourself, you know, for your business unit, if that's what you want to get to. And that's almost the whole plan for it, right? So access, it's a tricky word in the sense that it sounds so simple, but it's actually extremely rich in terms of how we plan to give access to data as a capability. And one of the things that I told you yesterday is that I was in a meeting with Steve a few months ago, and I said, I want to make data boring again, right? I don't want data to be a data function. I want it to be a language that we speak in the business. So that's sort of access. Then we have curiosity. As I said, most people just can't be bothered. And it's not that they can't be bothered because they don't want to. It's the fact that data actually, even though it sounds simple, it's pretty arcane actually. It's pretty complex. You know, there's so much comprehensiveness and richness to the various data disciplines. Like
intimidating.
To how intimidating, right? To how almost you can add value. It's not as simple to understand, right? And I think we have a set of initiatives that we're going to roll out, as I mentioned soon, that are meant to get people to just engage with data and say, look, it's not that scary, it's not that intimidating, it's not that complex, it's not that arcane. You can actually access it once we do the first pillar. You can actually do this. You can play with it yourself. So we have a few, you know, we're talking about a day of data events, right? We're talking about hackathons. We're talking about almost a whole program. This conversation today is part of our comms strategy, right? And then we finally have knowledge. And I think almost historically, when people talk about data culture, they usually used to talk about knowledge, which used to be called data literacy. You know, some people might already know about this before. But people have realized now that isn't sufficient. It isn't sufficient to just teach people how to do data because they can't be bothered or they can't don't have access, right? But as part of the trifecta, it's absolutely critical, right? And you know, we already have initiatives that existed before even I joined, right? In Embrand, and I think that's why we're so privileged to be in a position where we have so much already. But if you take the Data Academy, for example, right? This has been running forever. We have an apprenticeship levy scheme funded by mandated by the government. It's still our money. That we then allocate these funds towards the Data Academy, and we have tons of cohorts go through every year. I think this year was the first year we expanded it to what's called level 3. That's a more sort of accessible way to enter some of the data. But you know, I think the Data Academy is amazing. I think we're going to expand that massively actually towards level 7, level 6.
Yes,
these
of
are
course,
master level degrees as well. So I think it's such a great opportunity, and I think whoever wants to get involved, it's not mandated. It's not that everybody has to know and be a data specialist. But whoever wants to be involved in it, you have access to some of these resources.
Yeah, I think it's a good time to talk about that. Then that segues perfectly into the Data Academy, which is a big part of that pillar as well. So let's get some insight on that and kind of from first-hand experience. So those of you might know Kira Tully. Kira's in our people team. She's recently completed a level 4 Data Academy. And she actually made the comment to us that completing the apprenticeship was one of the hardest but most difficult yet incredibly rewarding experiences of a career so far. Says there's a lot to gain from the program in terms of learning about the endless opportunities that utilizing data in our roles can provide, and getting to grips with the modeling techniques to make better decisions is proven really invaluable, even down to simply challenging your own way of thinking and questioning. And that's encouraging to kind of hear from someone who's been through the program. But I suppose when it comes to data culture and that, what's really, if I think of myself as someone, like I said, I wasn't certainly data literate in any way. I'm still learning, don't get me wrong.
Part of data,
I know. But like with data culture, what really blew me away when I first saw the strategy was I probably didn't anticipate data culture being that third pillar. And it was all, there was no kind of, it was all about influencing, it was all about empowering colleagues. And that was probably my favorite thing to talk about, my favorite part of the strategy. So I think this just shows that you don't have to be in data, a data person, to use data and really kind of utilize it, I suppose, in your day-to-day role. Fair
Well,
to say.
I've got so many thoughts. I don't know how much time we have. But Kira, you're right. She's part of the wider people function, right? It's so incredible that actually she has completed a level 4, which is actually pretty technical. She's been learning Python and SQL and programming languages to do with data, right? And about some of the, introductions to artificial intelligence, machine learning, all that kind of stuff. So it is incredible that people that have nothing to do with data have a lot to do with data, right? That's almost the first point. The second point is that back in the days, you used to have almost the IT department in a business. Now every business is a tech business in a sense, right? And almost you think about data in the same way, where you think, well, it's the data function that has to do some data stuff, right? It's not. Everybody has to do data stuff nowadays, right? I talked about the business culture, right? You have the curiosity in the business culture. That's all about data. And I think when we look at data people, it isn't the 50 people in data. It is the 1,000 people or 800 people if you take it away sort of Griffin House and some of the HQ in Shore as well. That is what we're trying to work with and put our hands around and actually empower. So, shout out to Kira. I think it's great. And there's loads of people, right? There's about 20 people, I think, that go to these cohorts every year. Great retention benefits, great capabilities, great leads into group data when there's openings. So I think it's a fantastic initiative.
Absolutely. I suppose something for us to move on to, I'd be keen to hear is, and it relates to data culture, that third pillar, but the importance of what we're doing today, communicating to our colleagues about how we're doing it and about data culture. And so I suppose I'd be keen to ask you your thoughts on how important, I suppose, comms is and communicating is and keeping kind of in contact with our colleagues in terms of data as well.
Trust you to
That's my question that I've put to you anyway.
I mean, look, not to give you a big head, right? But comms is extremely important. Because of what I mentioned before in terms of the complexity and richness and to some degree the arcane nature of data. It is important to take people on a journey. And how do you take them on a journey? With stories, right? Storytelling. And I think we do storytelling through multiple ways. We tell stories through the work that we do. We tell stories through almost the exec type conversations to say this is roughly how it can affect the organization, but also we tell stories through these kind of sessions.
Of course,
different formats to it, right? We've done fast forward, we're doing this week, we're thinking of doing some mega stuff in the future.
Indeed, coming soon.
So I think it's just about being able to tell the right stories to get people to be excited and engage with data. If you remember, that data culture pillar was meaningfully engaged with data to yada yada.
It was,
and I think that's the whole point of what we're trying to do. Now, even though in the data strategy, comms isn't necessarily picked out as a pillar, we are looking to, for the analytics platform, I said that we're running discovery. We're going to do something very, very similar for the data culture pillar very soon, so in the next few months. And as part of the blueprint of how we're going to roll out data culture across the organization, as part of the wider business culture, comms is actually one of the pillars. So how else are you going to communicate with the rest of the business? If the whole point of the data culture is not for group data function, but for the rest of the business, how the hell are we going to do it without being able to communicate? Right. And I think the various the consistency message is important. I think the various ways to communicate via the various forums and ways to do it is super important. And we have that on the same level as the other 4 pillars. So learn by doing, leadership, training, and roles and responsibilities. That's how important comms is. It's as important as roles and responsibilities, right? So I think it's not to give you
specifically
too much, but comms is pretty important.
I think, like, you heard it there, folks, I suppose, first from Vlad, that it is, but I suppose more so, I just think it's great for everybody to know that they can kind of share their ideas with the wider business, and that by sharing and talking about what we're doing and how you can empower colleagues to help it, I just think that's a tool we should
actually
dive into more.
On that point, this organization will not be successful only by having a successful group data function, right? We need comms, we need product management, we need delivery management, we need the business to be behind us, we need HR, through Mitch, the business partner. So we need all these functions to be aligned to be able to deliver what is a business strategy. The data strategy is part of the business, not my strategy. It's just something I'm helping implement across the business. So all these ways, it's not just comms.
Yeah.
I'm just bringing it back down.
Yeah, no,
All
100%.
the I think are helping with the delivery of strategy.
Definitely. Well, thanks, Vlad. I mean, feels like a good time, we're talking about kind of engaging with data, and it feels like a good time to move on to the questions we've had so far in the chat.
I've got no sight of these.
This is all just going to be on the spot, so forgive him if he loses his way.
Pick the easy ones.
Ben's asked, I love this actually. Ben's asked, do you see the future of data collection changing as users want more focus on privacy? Key examples are Apple limiting tracking on iOS and Google saying they're moving away from cookie use as well. Great question.
Great question.
Very good question, Ben.
That's important. There's a prevailing thought in this. The industry moved back in the days when it actually cost a lot of money to collect data. Before big data, I mean, let's still call it that way. It costs a lot of money to collect data, and actually you have to be extremely focused as to which bits of data you would bring in because it would cost you to store it. Then big data came in, and there was some sort of idea that actually you should probably collect absolutely everything that you can, and then you figure out which things are useful to you. Well, then another wave came in, which is affected the whole privacy by design, GDPR, and all that part of the legislation, and not just legislation, but also ethics, what it is that we want to do rather than need to do. And I think in that sense, some of the data is protected by law today by GDPR. So, we have very strict rules as to which user data, you mentioned cookies and all that kind of stuff, which user data we can actually collect. As long as people give us consent to collect, use and process their data, then we can, and we do that. We're transparent with how we do it, and that's the cookies effectively we sign. If you've read them, please read them. But there's also tons of other data. When people think about data, they only think about customer data. Our business is so much richer. Stock data, product data,
people data,
people data, right? Our own people data. There's so much stuff that isn't even thought of that you can add value. It isn't just so sure. We call our core data sets customers, transactions, products, and clickstream or traffic data. That's our core data, and that's the first phase of the IT's platform, effectively. But the 99% of the value will be in everything else that less organizations look at. Everyone looks at the first four. Much fewer look at the other ones. So absolutely, we have duties, not only legally but also morally, to treat our customer data properly, and we do that. But also, there's so much more that isn't regulated in a sense, right? Who regulates stock data, right? That I think there's tons of value to unlock in that space. But
absolutely, great question, Ben. Hopefully that answers that one for you. Sam Bradshaw's asked, are there any emerging data tools / technologies that you feel will be more important in the world of data in the future?
Well, Sam, I knew that's the question. He actually also recently finished his data academy and got an award for being one of the top students in that course. So shout out to Sam. Everyone talks today. I'm surprised if anyone on the call hasn't yet heard of ChatGPT or Google Bard or the wider field that's called generative AI, right? There will always be waves and waves. And actually, if you've noticed, if you look at the industry across sort of the last 20 to 30 years, these waves come more and more often. I think that's the exciting bit. The fact that now today everyone talks about generative AI. Previous to today, they might have talked about something else. I don't know, text processing or image processing or whatever, something else. It is exciting, actually. Everybody should probably, I think Google yesterday released their version of ChatGPT, which is called Google Bard, to everybody, so everybody can access it. I think the more important thing is almost this idea of the commoditization of machine learning and artificial intelligence. Back in the days, it used to be humongous organizations that would create some of these and then keep it to themselves in a way, right? Now you can pay 2 pence to do a query to ChatGPT's API and get the same level of intelligence, the top level of intelligence they produce, but actually plug it into your own product. And I think that's where the industry is shifting. It isn't that organizations such as ours create a lot of these algorithms. It is rather that we implement and tweak and retrain some of these algorithms to serve our own purpose. I think that's the exciting thing. I think the Google CEO yesterday released something that said, actually, we cannot even compete in the Bard or ChatGPT space, because that's not where the money is. It's almost how do we help people use this in a commercial sense. So I highly encourage people, and that's part of the curiosity aspect.
Of course it is, going back to it, yeah.
What we're going to do in the next hackathon.
Yeah.
I highly encourage people to just go and play with some of the generative AI. So you can generate anything now, songs, recipes, text, anything that you can imagine. Cockatoos, images, videos, everything. So it's pretty cool. That's just a niche thing that is happening today, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be another wave that comes tomorrow and another wave that comes after that. I think it's more to plug these in. And actually, the data strategy gives us the agility to be able to adapt, to be agile, to take some of these things in. With the legacy infrastructure that we have, we cannot really do anything as quickly as that.
Yeah.
And by the time generative AI isn't cool anymore, we'll be there thinking, oh, we should do something in this space. It's just too late.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why we're trying to do this strategically.
Got to keep moving, of course, that would benefit. Yeah. So you wanted to be challenged, and I think I've got a question for you here that's going to give you a bit of a challenge. Anonymous has asked.
That's the problem.
You alluded to data as being decentralized, empowering users to foster their own ideas and creations. However, this sometimes creates many versions of the truth. How would you propose guardrails to maintain a single source of truth, a universal data dictionary, etc.? It's a great question, Anonymous. Thank you very much.
If you think about it today, when I mentioned at the very start, I said we've done about 90% of the operating model. We're missing about 10%. That 10% is that today, if you think about it, today to some degree, data is decentralized.
Yeah.
But decentralized in an isolated way. You might have pockets of data capabilities, actual data that is stored somewhere else that no one else can access. So in a sense, it's decentralized. Decentralization itself doesn't help anything. To the point of the anonymous user that has asked that. I think being able to govern data processes, principles, protection, and some of the other questions centrally, which is what we're trying to do, with the anti-start when the group data function, but then deploy expertise rather than infrastructure and principles. That is the powerful way, and that is how we're going to do it, and that's how we've done it in the brand tribes. I think that's pretty much the enterprise agility model. Now, someone's asked something very specific, which is data dictionaries or something like that. I consider that to be a sliver of the wider sort of data governance that we're going to approach, and that's part of the data strategy. Please read the data strategy. We are actually openly hiring a data governance manager, which will then form my fifth and final discipline or pillar, which is called data management.
Of course.
And that together with data architecture, which we already have embedded, and some of the plans for the data culture rollout that I mentioned, we're probably going to start in a few months. That then starts our data governance program that has many, many streams, not just data dictionary or cataloging, but also data lineage, data transparency, data ownership, data stewardship, all that kind of stuff. So that will be addressed. We just kind of needed to first understand what the hell is happening first to then be able to govern it. And once it's governed centrally, then the expertise gets decentralized. Super powerful.
Yeah, you mentioned data management as well. That is mentioned in what we've got kind of on Fabric in the strategy as well. So
we haven't established it yet because
it's like a bit of a time coming soon.
But we're just about to establish that.
Fab. Well, hopefully that answers your question, Anonymous. Thank you very much. A great question. We've got one from Matt Dawson. Says, "Hi Vlad, great update. What's your guidance to the group on how we develop curiosity around data and how we can explore and develop ourselves in the world of data?" I suppose that's a good one actually, because Matt's asking externally as well how colleagues can do so.
Well, the whole point of the data culture is externally. It's for the colleagues, not for group data. Matt's actually a great example, right? Because he's an extremely data savvy user that is probably extremely frustrated with the fact that he lacks the right access,
definitely,
and perhaps knowledge in his team to be able to deliver some of these things. So one of the initiatives I think that we have in the curiosity space, there's a few in the data structure, but the one that I'm most excited about is what we call the data community. And again, it sounds extremely simple, but actually today, group data has a function, simple things, a Teams channel, a DO, where they can actually interact and understand what's happening and talk to each other. But there isn't a data community yet that is established and mature across the business. You know, there's lots of people that engage with data that don't need to be in the group data function, that don't have a space to actually foster some of these conversations and some of these exchanges. But Matt's question also was specifically, how does he do it, right? And I think that's why we need that whole trifecta. So to me, I think Matt is already extremely curious. So in a sense, he doesn't need to be even more curious. It's the fact that he lacks the other two categories of the trifecta, and I think that is the problem. Most of the problem in this organization, I think, because data has actually been in MBAC for quite a while, think most people have engaged with it. Most people are very curious. Most people are actually quite data savvy.
It's getting on.
They don't have that access. But as other initiatives that we talked about, so we're probably going to run a hackathon where actually anybody in the business that wants to be part of it, we'll do something over a weekend or something fun, loads of pizza or whatever. And you work alongside group data people, DT people, whatever. Great little data products. Get ChatGPT to write you an analysis summary of what's happened, trading wise last week or whatever. So we're going to do a hackathon, I think, and we still have to plan that. We're going to do a day of data conference where, again, everybody, not just group data, everybody will have the ability to get involved. We plan to do brown bag sessions or lunch, lunch learn type sessions, or drop-in workshops, I'm going to call them, where, for example, we will run a session weekly with the data visualization team where anybody that has any question about either any of the existing reports or any visualization question of how the hell do I understand this data, they come and drop in and say, look, help me, right? Sure. We're gonna open up effective group data to the rest of the organization, as well as get the rest of the organization to engage with themselves within this community. And none of these exist today. There's bits and bobs that exist, but none of it is, again, strategic, comprehensive, and that's why it hasn't yet really taken off.
Definitely.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So if it hasn't, let me know.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, and I think it was a really good question because that really opened up the data culture pillar a bit more for us as well. So Anonymous, I'm going to give Anonymous the floor again, has simply asked, I hope this makes sense to you, Vlad, has simply asked, are we going to GCP or AWS?
GCP. So
GCP.
We have made this decision quite a few months ago, actually.
Yes.
There's many reasons why we've evaluated this and went with GCP eventually. But one of the reasons is actually most organizations now are in a sort of hybrid clouds type of architecture that gives you some sort of commercial redundancy, right? We don't want AWS to be this all-powerful supplier. Nor do we want Google, right? We actually have a huge commercial relationship with Google already in terms of Google Ads and some of the other things as well. We would like to distribute some of these responsibilities. Also, there's three main clouds out there: AWS, Azure, and GCP. GCP has tended to be closer to where retailers are. Retailers tend to hate Amazon for whatever reason. But also GCP or Google generally has tended to historically be closer to AI, data, ML, some of these other things. It also, we think, has a better user experience. A lot of our data is already in GCP, so there's no point in moving it out. If you think of Google Ads or some of these bits of data that are generated by Google, it's already in GCP. What's the point of moving it to AWS to pay even extra money? So there's many reasons why, but simply it's going to be GCP. For the Answers platform.
Straightforward, but that one from Kira Tully actually has actually followed up on kind of the leading from the Data Academy. She says, how can we celebrate those who are forming the extended data community?
Well, there isn't a data community, and I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
People don't even know who is almost data engaged, if you call it that way, or data champions. We haven't even defined or formed some of these things, and therefore it's very difficult to celebrate things that you don't see. I think the whole point of the data community is to bring visibility to everything that is happening across the whole group. The other thing is that group data itself may only create 10% of the analytics that is done across the organization. 90% has already been created elsewhere, and therefore there's plenty that group data can learn from the rest of the organization that they don't yet have access to. And I think it's that's kind of the whole point of the data community. Celebration comes the day of data. When we have an actual community. And that is one of the things that we could do. But first, identifying the people who are
celebrating it
and have progressed. I mean, obviously we know who's been through the Data Academy, but as a community across the whole group, it's quite difficult to do now.
Sure. Yeah. Hopefully that answers the question there for Kira. We've got about 5 minutes left. Obviously, keep the questions coming, guys. Gonna ask you one that I'm keen to ask actually that was pre-submitted before the session.
Something about comms.
How good is no? I think this is probably going to require quite an answer from you, but how can we use data to influence on a daily basis, and also how should we not use data to influence? I love the how not to use data to influence.
Well, there's three big questions.
It's
how
big.
Today we use that already. I gave an example of 2 weeks ago when Steve asked to do something that influenced the whole business, that effectively that insight went straight to the PLC board. And said, this is roughly what we think we should focus on. there's no higher level of influence than that.
Yeah.
So that really happens today, right? As I said, we have analysts embedded into the brand tribes. In the trading meeting, we talk about data every day.
Yeah.
There's data everywhere. So I think we're already influencing. The second question is probably more interesting and more important, right? Because, you know, a lot of people talk wrongly, I think, about a single source of truth.
Yeah.
And actually, once you create insight rather than data, you aggregate data and you do something with it, it creates instead of insight, you can actually come up with different types of truth, different levels of interpretability, right?
Yep.
Actually, that's where there's a degree of responsibility that people have to take. Analysts, data engaged people, data aware people have to take responsibility to understand what level of confidence do you have around this insight that you just created, and are you being almost ethical in the use or application of it, right? Is it that I can come to a meeting and speak very confidently about some numbers that I know are wrong to get my way of the meeting, right?
Yeah.
And that feels unethical.
Yeah.
But it could be true. If you look at the data this way, from this angle, it is true, right? And I think that's the problem. Through the knowledge pillar of the data culture, hopefully a lot more people will be able to speak more confidently about data.
Yeah.
Through the access pillar, they will hopefully get access to what we think is the cleanest version of data.
Yeah.
So there's a few initiatives that are working in the same space, but people will have a moral duty as they become more and more data engaged to actually be ethical with how they action some of the things. And actually we have, you know, that's really important. We have an ESG committee at the PLC level, or had, and one of the recurring agenda items is AI ethics, actually. And we have a framework that we built internally. Adam McGough, the head of data science, runs a framework called Responsible AI. And as part of that, it's how we set the principles of how we want to be responsible with data use, really, not just AI, but data use across the whole organization. That isn't just group data. That is the whole of the group as well. So I think the second question is actually way more interesting, which is what can go wrong. And not for people to be scared, but actually people to be responsible.
I love that question. Yeah, 100%. It's something I was kind of wondering about. I didn't know how to articulate it, but yeah, great. Thanks, Vlad. Just kind of there's a question come through in it and on the chat, and I suppose this for me it is data culture, because this is so leaning into curiosity, stripped down to kind of the basic level of it. But someone has just simply asked, what do data engineering do? So there we go, curiosity.
So there's it's a good question, actually, right? And the way we have split with the organization design, you can say everything is data, therefore everything reports script. It doesn't make any sense, right? So you kind of have to set your remit, and our remit starts from data management all the way to sort of data visualization. And in between somewhere there's a team called data engineering. And traditionally the core set of a data engineer's capabilities are that they are able to source data from across the organization, build data pipelines to move that data, refresh, clean, enrich that data, govern that data into the analytics platform, and they also maintain the analytics platform. That's almost the traditional sense of what data engineering has done and is doing at Inbound today, and will do with the analytics platform. There's also enrichment of what's gonna happen in the data engineering discipline moving forward. There's going to be data products that we build, you know, with their own interface. If you think price tag and a few other applications, there's going to be machine learning algorithms that we deploy, and we have to deploy them within a wider sort of framework that is well governed, and that's called ML ops. There's a few more disciplines that enrich the core capabilities that a data engineering team used to do and are doing. But largely today, data pipelines, give me this data from A to B, make sure it's clean and present it to me in a way that I can actually access and use it.
100%. I mean, we're nearly out of time. I suppose I'd want to ask you.
10 minutes.
I know, it's flown by. Time flies when you're having fun.
The 3 copies that I've had.
Maybe it's just going really quickly. I just want to ask you. You mentioned the hackathons. You mentioned the day of data. Who knows? But what is on the horizon? What's next for data, and when can colleagues expect the next kind of update from the team or the domain?
Good question from you, Josh.
Well,
well, look, we try to engage with the organisation on a regular basis. We do this at multiple levels. So we have sort of a PLC level update that we do every 2 months. It's called the Data Advisory Board. We have, you know, I have my one-to-ones with Steve every month where there's an update. We have the quarterly business reviews that happen. So there's multiple ways we sort of keep the business engaged. This type of engagement with the rest of the business tends to be on a sort of quarterly-ish basis. But what I'm keen to do is, one, keep it fairly simple and fun rather than let's do a fully scripted conversation, as you know.
Yeah.
And also try and almost change the format every time. And I think that's why we said hackathons, let's do some of the conference type activities rather than just updates. But we regularly engage with business. I think quarterly is probably the right sort of frequency for us.
Yeah.
But you tell me, you want a data strategy.
Well, I suppose so. One for me to take away maybe from myself, but no, we've pretty much run out of time. That has gone so quickly, but I just want to thank you, Vlad. I've really enjoyed it. Hopefully everyone else has. A huge thank you to you all for joining us today. As we've talked about there, it really is about you coming with us on our data journey. And as we said, the data strategy, it is available for you to view on Fabric. If you haven't before today, please make sure to take that away from this session and go and have a read through it. Stay curious. And yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Until next time, from myself and from Vlad. Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.